And so we read, and this is our passage for today, he says, don't be misled. You cannot mock the justice of God. You will always harvest what you plant. Those who live only to satisfy their own sinful nature will harvest decay and death from that sinful nature. But those who live to please the Spirit will harvest everlasting life from the Spirit. Paul continues this metaphor of planting and harvesting the stuff of life. But now he zooms in on how and what we plant in our freedom matters. That it will determine what kind of fruit you will have. For Paul, it's all about learning to use his freedom for love and not selfishness. Now, why did I just say love? Where did that come from? Did that come out of left field? He says it's freedom for love, not for selfishness. And we know this because we read about this last week where Paul made it clear, where he says in the next slide, instead, use your freedom to serve one another in love. For the whole law can be summed up in this one command: love your neighbor as yourself. Love your neighbor as yourself. What you plant is what you harvest. Now, imagine I asked each of you, which I will, and I asked you to share 2 or 3 things that have shaped you, that have made you who you are. I would wager good money that many of you would think of someone else who has helped you be who you are. There's a person, there's a name, there's a face that might come to mind to say, I am who I am because of this person. Maybe it's family, friends. Maybe it's somebody you had a relationship with, a loved one. Maybe it was a mentor in your faith, a coworker. You would tell me about a relationship or community, most likely. Most likely, who you are is shaped by somebody who has come into your life. Why? Because that's the stuff of life. Community and relationships matter. Now, if you said to me, if you went a different route and you said to me, well, what makes me great, what makes me a great boss, employee, spouse, leader, was that I always looked out for number one. I pushed past anyone who got in my way. I stepped on people and buried them and kicked them out of my way. I crushed it because success is all that matters. Now, if you said that, I would hear someone who may have gotten to the top. They have maybe reached a goal they had. But I would hear about someone who has lost friendships, relationships, possibly family, all along the way. I would hear about somebody who would have lost the stuff of life. In fact, I would actually say that kind of story isn't that compelling. I mean, on one hand, it feels for a moment, I want to reach the top. Is that what it takes? But deep down inside, we know there's something hollow about that kind of life. It may impress for a moment, but in fact, it grinds against something very real in our soul. It's as if living for the bottom line grinds against the stuff of life. What we plant matters. And Paul reminds us a life lived like that won't lead to a harvest of love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. It won't lead to there. It will lead to decay. Because true freedom isn't found in using people, it's found in loving them. But Paul's warning goes even deeper, I'm going to suggest. He's not just talking about obvious selfishness. He's naming something more subtle, a self-centered life that often disguises itself as self-sufficiency or self-care. Now, before I go on, don't hear me incorrectly. Don't get me wrong. There's healthy version of self-care. Please hear that. I believe in that. It's important to have boundaries. It's important to rest. It's important to nurture your well-being, to take care of yourself. It matters. So please hear that correctly. It does matter. What I'm saying is that the line between healthy self-concern and isolating self-absorption is thin and easily crossed. This is why freedom is a gift and a skill. We live in a culture that praises independence, celebrates putting yourself first, and often tells us that looking out for number one is the path to happiness. When self-concern becomes self-obsession, we start to detach from the very relationships that make us whole or happy. That it begins to divide us from things that we know deep in our soul actually matter. Author and social critic Henry Farley puts it this way. He says, many modern expressions of taking care of the self first are actually denials of our need for others. They become excuses to ignore our responsibility to relationship or to community or to even understand that we need others to be happy or healthy. Now, Rich Villodas, a pastor and author with a great book, Good and Beautiful and Kind, he puts it this way. He says, to be born into this world means that we are all under a power that would have us live incurvatus inse, which means curved inward. Now, he's drawing on St. Augustine's sentence here, which is a Latin concept of incurvatus inse, which is describing sin as the reality that curves us inward, leading to self-centeredness and a failure to love. Powerfully in his book, Villodas emphasizes that sin is not merely about breaking laws. It's not just like you broke a law, so I've sinned. He says, actually, sin is fundamentally a failure to love. As Jesus highlighted when he summarized the greatest commandment, to love God with all of who we are, Paul, my paraphrase, and to love our neighbors as ourselves. But then he goes even further and he suggests in his book that this inward curvature caused by sin disrupts our ability to engage in mutual loving relationships. In fact, he writes that the spiritual vitality, so walking in step by the Spirit that Paul is writing to the Galatians about, our spiritual vitality should not be measured by sin avoidance, but rather our capacity to love. In a world which demands quick results and instant gratifications, it's easy to believe that our small acts of goodness actually don't matter. It's easy to begin to believe no results or fruit, and so we believe, well, maybe the universe is a little bit random. Maybe my decisions aren't connected to a larger story. But Paul insists that they do matter and that they are part of the large story. So he says, don't be misled. You cannot mock the justice of God. You will always harvest what you plant. What he's saying is all of our decisions are seeds that we plant. Our attitudes are seeds that we plant. Our acts of love, prayers, words of encouragement, they're all seeds planted in the soil of real life. And one day, they will grow. So, what does this all mean for us right now as we're concluding this series, as we're looking at all this? What does this all mean? Well, simply it means your life matters. You matter. Your life matters. Your choices matter. Your ordinary, earthy, everyday life, your mundane, your I'm not being noticed, your slow days, your dark days, they all matter. Your faithful acts of love and generosity when no one is looking matter into eternity. Every time you choose love over selfishness, every moment you resist the pull to turn inward, instead lean towards community, towards relationships, every decision to forgive, to serve, to trust, you plant the stuff of life. You plant the stuff of life.